Hey everyone, it's CJ here again and got another video for you, TF2, and I'm going to be talking about MvM in particular, and this time it's going to be the best MvM loadouts. What I mean by best MvM loadouts are kind of the loadouts that are best to be playing MvM for each of the classes. As you can see here, I've got lots of tours of MvM. I've got 60 on Expert and over 120 on 2 cities, which is what I play mostly at the moment. So a lot of these loadouts, they're all tried and tested with the best players in the best situations, and it's just kind of saying 90% of the time these are the loadouts that you should be using in the game while playing MvM. Just a disclaimer, this doesn't mean you have to. You know, I don't think that just because these are the best loadouts, or the optimum loadouts maybe I should say, that doesn't mean that you have to. There's lots of room for experimentation, and that's how these loadouts came about. That's how these loadouts kind of got discovered by people that, you know, they've been trying out different weapons, trying out different methods, and kind of found these ones to be the most useful in most situations. But like I said, it doesn't mean you have to. Try out with different things. There's lots of options, lots of ways to optimize, and there's lots of different styles. So we're going to go through the classes. We'll start off with the Scout, and as you can see here, it's very different to what you'd see, I guess, in a competitive game. I'm gonna skip the primary for a second. I'll come back to that in a minute. But the secondary is the Mad Milk, and that is 110% no reason you should not use this for Scout. It is a hugely advantageous weapon for the Scout, simply because you can upgrade it to slow down giants, and especially in MvM when you've got the giant scouts which go extremely fast, and if they get the bomb they're going to get to last very, very quickly. So you can upgrade that, and you can upgrade the recharge time. Definitely have that on your Scout. You can chuck milk at the giant scouts or anything that's trying to get past you, and it will slow them down. And also if you shoot them, you know, you'll get your health back as well, which is the basic upgrade of the Mad Milk. For your melee, I'd have the Fan of War. A lot of people like to use the Sandman. Here's the Sandman, simply because they have the same kind of idea. The reason people use the Fan of War is because if you hit someone, marks them for death. Doesn't do much damage, but it means that anyone you hit with it will take mini crits. And obviously if you hit a giant with the Fan of War, they're going to take mini crits from all the different sources of damage, so you know, your demo, your soldier, whatever is shooting it. So it's really, really good, but it does mean you have to get up in the face, and a lot of people like to use the Sandman because it has the same kind of thing. If you hit the ball at someone, it will mark them for death, but you have to buy that in the upgrade store for, you know, it costs some of your credits, whereas the Fan of War you don't need to upgrade, which is why I prefer it. And because you pick up money, you get a lot of health, you're going to have a lot of resistance as a Scout, so it means you're going to be in the face of the action. You can kind of act as a tank, and you can jump in there and just hit things with your Fan of War. So this is again, these two I would argue and say those absolutely for definite on your Scout. Your primary is up for debate. A lot of people use different things. A lot of the time I use the scattergun because I like to go around and shoot things. But as a Scout, generally you're not supposed to be shooting things. You need to be picking up your money. You need to be marking giants with the Fan of War. You need to be slowing down things with your Mad Milk. The primary you're not going to get out very often. But if you use the Soda Popper, it's quite fun because you can build up hype, and when you alt fire with the hype meter full, it means you can jump multiple times. That will help simply because sometimes there might be money in a place that you can't quite reach in the early rounds when maybe you haven't upgraded your jump height, haven't upgraded your speed, and you can't reach there, you know, very quickly. You might have to go around a staircase or something. So the Soda Popper allows you to jump multiple times in order to get to where you need to be. So sometimes that's quite helpful. It's quite helpful, and a lot of people use it, and I think it probably is the preferred one. Other options, you can use the scattergun if you want to. It does more damage, but like I said, as a Scout you really shouldn't be focusing on damage. Another option would be the Force of Nature, simply because of the knockback it has. If you shoot something with the Force of Nature, it will be knocked back, and it can lead to some funny situations. If you shoot something, it can get knocked back into the pit. Also can slow down things, so if you're chasing back a robot with the bomb, you can knock them back a little bit with the Force of Nature. But those are very, very clutch, very rare situations. In general, the Soda Popper, I would say, is the best, simply because of the jump height. So that's the Scout. As always, you should have your canteen. I'm not sure if I've popped this on all of my classes yet, but you should be running a canteen. But as a Scout, generally you're not going to need to use your canteen. unless you need to use it for, uber charges maybe if you're struggling to stay alive, which shouldn't be happening if you've got resistances. So we'll move on to the soldier, and again, this kind of is a standard thing, but the soldier is pretty much the most customizable class in MvM. There are so many different ways to play it. You can pretty much use any of the banners, any of the weapons. You can have so many different combinations, up to the point where I've played using 6 soldiers in MvM, just 6 soldiers, no other classes, and been able to counter everything. We had someone to focus the giants, we had someone to pick up money. There's so many different ways to play, but like I said, this one is your bog standard. If you jump in a game and there's one space left and need a soldier, if you set up like this, you're going to be okay. I prefer the rocket launcher. My reasons why, because you got the default damage and the default clip size. A lot of people like to use the black box because of the health on hits. When you hit someone, you get 15 health back. It is good, but I usually find that I'm missing a rocket. I'm always one rocket short, and you need to invest quite a lot in order to get another rocket. I think it's 400 credits, whereas on the default rocket launcher you can just upgrade health on kill, which means every time you kill someone you get 25 HP. So as long as you're upgrading in the right way, you can actually get a lot of health back using the rocket launcher. But again, obviously the default can be likened to the original if you prefer using the original. Other options, again, you can use the Beggar's Bazooka. Does so much damage, quite hard to control, but if you use it right, can be quite devastating. And the direct hit, some people use that. If you've got good aim, you can actually take down giants pretty quickly with it. But giant killing is pretty much the job of the heavy. For me, playing as a soldier, you're going to be controlling the flank, you're going to be controlling the upper areas, and I like the mobility. Beggar's Bazooka doesn't give you as much mobility if you're not that good with rocket jumping with it. And staying alive, I think the default, for me, is the best option. Secondary, again, there's so many secondaries for the soldier. I could talk about the backup, I could talk about the contra, but for me, you can't really beat the buff banner, simply because when you upgrade, you do so much more damage with the soldier, and you can get your buff banner charges very, very quickly. And then if you're using your buff banner, you're giving your entire team mini crits, which is very, very useful to take down giants, to take down tanks. You can pretty much solo a tank with a soldier if he's using the buff banner and he does it correctly. So for me, that's the best thing. There are some waves. There is one wave in particular on Bavarian Bot Bash where there is a giant heavy, and he's a giant deflector crit heavy, and he's got 2 giant quick fix medics on him, and the crits that come out can absolutely destroy you because it's early on and a lot of people aren't going to have full resistances yet. So the battalion's backup is quite useful in that, and it's because you don't really upgrade your buff banner, you can switch to the battalion's backup for that round only, use it, and then you're not going to take the crit damage, and you take reduced damage from that heavy, and it makes it a lot easier to take him and his medics down. If you're having multiple soldiers, sometimes I've used multiple soldiers in MvM just for a bit of a laugh. The contra can be quite good because it gives your team HP when they kill things. And the Bison is an extremely overpowered weapon in MvM. I might make a video in the future, but if anyone's watched previous videos on my YouTube, you may see where we played a game with 5 soldiers and we were all using Bison, and because of the projectile penetration, you can absolutely obliterate robots and tanks. But like I said, for me, the standout item in the secondary is the buff banner, and the whip is just there to speed your teams up, your teammates up. Not really going to be using your melee much, it's just going to be rocket launcher. So that's soldier. Moving on to Pyro. Pyro is a very, very niche class. It's a class that ideally in the current meta of MvM you shouldn't be using unless you're in specific situations. But like I said, playing with friends, if you've got a bunch of great players, sometimes we play with Pyros. It's good fun. On Hamlet Hostility, on wave number 7, there are 3 tanks that you need to kill in order to finish the wave and also finish the map. So the best way to do that is to play Pyros. There's lots of support robots to kill, but there's no necessary to kill them. You just need to focus down on the tanks, and having 6 Pyros using the flog is very, very powerful. A lot of people don't like using the flog, they call it a noob weapon. Maybe in pubs and such it is, but in MvM it's quite powerful. There is a damage penalty, no random critical hits, no air blast, but if you're using it on something like the tank, you can solo a tank by yourself as a pyro. Just to note, like there are some classes in MvM like the PYRO that don't get much use outside of private groups who might want to play it for fun. So in the future I will be making videos about how to play those classes and the different ways that they can actually be very, very useful, and PYRO is one of them. Again, can use many different things. If you're wanting a bit of a tank PYRO, by tank I actually mean instead of a heavy and being a tank for your team, you can use the flamethrower. But this is specifically as a tank buster to take down tanks. Use the flog. You can have the man melter to put out teammates if they're on fire, seeing as you don't have air blast on your primary, but again you're not going to be using your secondary very much, and a power jack is simply there to speed you around the map and get there quickly. But considering you're going to have crits on the flog 25 to 50% of the time you're running it, it's very, very good, simply because of the damage that you can do using the 3 times amount of damage you're getting from crits. But like I said, it is a bit of a niche class. You're not going to use it very much, so I'll be making its own video in the future. So we'll move on to Demo Man, one of my favourite classes in MvM, simply because of the amount of damage and the carry factor, I like to call it. I can play Demo and carry most teams, as can any good MvM player, because it is such a dominating class. It has so much influence on the game, and you have a lot of responsibility. The default for me is definitely the sticky launcher. You need to use the sticky launcher and upgrade it. It is very, very useful. It's very, very powerful, and if you upgrade the reload speed, the firing speed, the damage, and health on kill, you can just be a Demo Man on the run and just do things by yourself. The rest of the weapons are up for discussion. I mean, this one is up for discussion. A lot of people I know like to use the Scottish Resistance. I personally don't. I prefer the mobility. I prefer being able to shoot on the run rather than waiting for the traps and playing that way. It is possible to take down giant quick fix medics with one set of stickies placed by the Scottish Resistance, whereas that's not possible with the sticky bomb launcher all the time. But I prefer being able to damage things on the run and do a lot more damage that way. Personal preference, as always. With your primary, I like having a grenade launcher as a backup. Ooh, excuse me. I like having the grenade launcher as a backup simply because you can deal out 400 damage if you've got good aim with the pipes from pretty much any range. It's quite good if you've got some traps down and you still want to do some damage to maybe some of the lower robots. There might be some scats running through while you're waiting for giants quick fix medics to walk over your crit sticky traps. Something like that. But another option is to use either the booties or the bootlegger. If you take a look at the description, you get 25 max health, increasing turning and things like that don't really matter, but the extra health is quite beneficial in MvM because you're going to get attacked from a lot of angles, and as a Demo Man you're going to be wanting to upgrade your sticky launcher as opposed to resistances and things like that. So having 25% max health in general is quite good, and that actually comes into it more when I talk about the Islander. Now the Islander might be a strange selection for most people. Most people just go for a default thing like the pan or the bottle, something like that. Whereas the Islander, you actually lose 25 health. Now the Demo Man has 175 health to begin with. 25 less would take him down to 150. If you use the booties, you can go back to 175 while using the Islander. Now you might think, well, you're going to be using sticky bomb launch, you're going to be using grenade launch, you're not going to be using your Islander. Well, the thing with the Islander is it says increase speed and health with every head you take. Now, if you kill 2 robots with the Islander, so you collect 2 heads, you're going to have 180 HP, which is 5 HP more than you would have normally. If you kill 4 robots, so you have 4 heads with the Islander, you take yourself up to a base HP of 210. Now, 210 is 35 HP more than the Demo Man is regularly. Not to mention that you actually go much faster general walking speed, which is helpful in trying to get out of certain situations. So if you can jump in and take out some snipers or take out any little robots with the Islander, get 4 heads to begin with, you're going to have a lot more HP when you're buffed by your medic and in general, which can be very, very helpful. And then you can focus on taking things down with the sticky bomb launcher. That HP is even increased if you use the booties as well as the Islander taking the heads. So again, it's all up for discussion. If you want to play a bit more risky and try and take the heads and then use them from there, remember you lose your heads when you die. You'd have to do it each time you respawn. But if you want to play like that, it's very, very good. Or you can just stick with a general thing like the bottle or the pan and then just concentrate on using a sticky launcher. Moving on to the heavy. The heavy is a pretty basic class. You're going to want to use your sandwich. There's nothing else in the secondary that you'd want to think of using. Remember that your medic is the person that's going to be wanting to revive people on your team, but no one can revive him. So make sure that you chuck down a sandwich for him now and again, keep him alive so that he can revive and keep the rest of your team alive. The gloves, again, personal preference, I prefer Fists of Steel, simply because if I'm in a situation where I need to get out, the Fist of Steel is going to keep me alive. I'm going to take 40% less damage from people shooting me as I'm trying to get away. Whereas if the gloves are running urgently, you're not going to be wanting to get places very, very fast in MvM. Generally, you get to the front lines, then the robots spawn. Other than that, there's no need for speed as a heavy, and if you're trying to escape a dangerous situation, you're going to take mini crits from the GRU, which is bad. You're going to die more quickly, puts more pressure on your team that way. The primary, I prefer the minigun. It gives me a little bit more mobility, gives me a little bit more escape factor, I guess. If something's going wrong, I can unwind my minigun and run out using my Fist of Steel and take less damage and do it much more quickly. A lot of people like using the Brass Beast. Let's have a look. Where's the Brass Beast? Here we go. 20% damage bonus. Does a lot more damage than the regular minigun. However, the slower spin up time and the slowest move speed, when you actually have it deployed, it can come into the factor when you're trying to dodge things, if you're trying to escape a situation by unspinning your minigun. So it depends. If you're going to be sat on the dispenser, then you can use the Brass Beast. If you want to be moving around a little bit and be chasing the giants and following them as they go along the map, use the minigun. Some people like using the Natasha. Natasha is an interesting one because it does slow things down, and it does slow down the super scouts. But like we said before, that's what our scout's using Mad Milk for. He's going to be mad milking those giant scouts, and that's what you rest of the team is going to focus on, killing them before the milk wears off. You don't really need the Natasha for anything like that, and it's got 25% damage penalty. Now you can't increase the damage on your minigun. It's one of the few weapons that you can't actually increase damage on. You can increase the firing speed, but you don't want to be taking damage penalties before you've even started, which is the reason I don't use the Natasha, seeing as your heavy is going to be the guy that you want to be focusing on giants. You know, the giant soldiers, the giant demos, the giant scouts, the giant heavies. Anything that's big is really, really easy target for your heavy to do as much damage as possible, which is why I prefer the default minigun or even the Brass Beast. Onto NG, which is again a very, very important class in MvM, and his loadout isn't really up for debate for me. The primary should be the Rescue Ranger. You're going to have a lot of metal in MvM if you upgrade your metal wisely, and you can fix your buildings from distance using the Rescue Ranger. And if you want to get out, you can keep your building alive by using mouse 2 and getting it out there and building up in a safer position. Using the Rescue Ranger has meant that I've not had to use building canteens. I don't like using canteens as an engineer because it's 50 credits to buy a building canteen that builds your buildings automatically. That is extremely, extremely helpful, and I would advise any newer players to absolutely do that. But the further you go on, you might want to be using those upgrades, that upgrade money, for something else. Resistances, movement speed, jump height in order to get into different places. That way you can save on canteens, and the Rescue Ranger is such a good weapon. It keeps your buildings alive, you can get them out, and it is without debate. You really don't want to be fighting as an engineer, and that's what all of the other items are for. The Thompson used to be used back in Expert simply because it reduces Uber on targets when you hit them, and the Giant's quick fix medics, you could actually take away their charge by spamming them with the Thompson, and it made them much easier to kill without them using. But these days it's not used much more, and the Rescue Ranger is much, much better. The Wrangler, again, is so much better than any of the other options here. The short circuit used to be used before it was nerfed after its initial buff. You used to be able to totally nullify things like giant demos and giant soldiers just by standing in front of them and spamming the short circuit, and they couldn't hurt you or anyone in your team. These days, since it was nerfed again a little bit, and you use up metal when you destroy a projectile, the spamming of the soldiers causes you to lose metal very, very quickly. And while it is useful in certain situations, I think the Wrangler just is better for the engineer. A lot of people ask me when they're watching my stream, why do I wrangle so much? Simply because with wrangling you can actually aim what you want to aim at. Your sentry will shoot whatever robot or whatever enemy is closest to your sentry. That might not be the robot that you want to kill. It might not be the little scout that's running, around your sentry. You might be wanting to focus the giant, and that's why wrangling allows you to choose which target you want to shoot. But also, when you're firing with your Wrangler, your firing speed is increased. You have a higher firing speed of the bullets coming out of your minigun when you're using your Wrangler as to when it's left by its own, which means you can actually do more damage in a short space of time while using the Wrangler. So it's a very, very good weapon, and of course the shield. can't forget about the shield. It keeps your sentry alive, and if your sentry's alive, then all's good with the engineer. Wrench, you don't want to use a gunslinger, you're not going to be using minis, and any of the other wrenches you can pretty much use anything you want really. Eureka Effect I would never use, simply because of the repair and upgrade rate. Southern Hospitality you could use. The fire damage penalty, you might get caught out by pyros every now and again, but it is good for catching out some of those spies. And the Jag, the faster construction rate, again, it's not that beneficial, so I just go for the default. And the default PDA. For Medic, which has turned into one of the more key classes in MvM lately, after its patch which introduced the shield just shortly before Two Cities was introduced into TF2. It wasn't really used very much, and now it is pretty much one of the staple classes. For me, I like to use the crossbow because I like healing and shooting the odd thing, but you're not going to be using your primary much, if at all. Some people like to use the default syringe gun, because you can upgrade it to use things like milk. If you're using milk on your syringes, it has the same effect as if the scout's using it, and it will slow down targets, which could be quite clutch in certain situations. If there's a giant scout that's gotten past and none of your team has managed to slow it down with any of their weapons, you could spray a few syringes onto it and it would slow it down for the rest of your team to kill. But again, you're not going to be using your primary that much. Your focus is going to be on healing, and for me there's only two mediguns that you should really be using in as a medic. The first one is the Kritzkrieg. You're going to be increasing your team's damage by so much, whether you're using it on a demo man or a heavy or even a soldier. Really, you should be laying sticks down with the demo man, using the Kritzkrieg, and then pretty much using crits on him in order to kill the large groups of robots, the smaller robots, and using crits on your heavy so you can focus down the giants. It is by and far the best one to use, although there are some situations where you might want to use a different one, and for me that would be the Vaccinator. The Vaccinator doesn't get much use anywhere else in TF2. It's not that great of a weapon compared to the other mediguns, at least. The default medigun, the crits, and even the quick fix are used in competitive a lot more. But the Vaccinator has 4 Uber charges. And if you didn't realise, when you use your Uber, so whether that's crits or Uber or whatever, it revives your teammates in MvM quicker. Now, with the Vaccinator, because you've got 4 charges, that means you can spam your charges and you can spread out heals and keep reviving teams a lot quicker. Now, if you're running a sniper on your team instead of a demo man, which is quite often the case on some maps, you're not going to have someone to really crits, are you? So you might want to use the Vaccinator and try and keep your teams alive. Now, this is kind of a specialist way of playing, and a lot of people are going to complain if you run the Vaccinator until they see it in action. And if you use it effectively, it is really, really good. It enables your team to be much more aggressive, and if they die, it doesn't matter. You've got 4 Uber charges, and by the time you've used your 1 to revive someone, you're going to have it back again in a couple of seconds. And if you have 4 players die on your team, you can revive all 4 of them with the Vaccinator charges pretty much instantly, and that enables you to keep being aggressive playing MvM on pretty much any of the maps. But again, generally I would stick with the Kritzkrieg. And as for your melee, well, the Ubersaur is by far the best. You can run in and just start slashing things for 25% Uber. If you're feeling gutsy, you can run in on the giants or run in on the slower robots and risk death. Or if you just want to play it safe, wait for the sentry busters that come for your engineer. Let your engineer take his sentry back and hide it in a safe place, and while the sentry buster's trying to get to him, you can slash him 4 times. You're going to get 100% Uber. Moving on to the sniper, again, like the pyro, it's kind of a niche class, and a lot of people talk down about it or will kick people who pick sniper because he's not a class that you, in inverted commas, should be playing. But it is very, very dangerous in the right hands. If you are a good sniper is better than a good demo man. But a bad demo man is better than a bad sniper. It's kind of like a rule of thumb. If you don't trust yourself as a sniper, you should be playing demo man, because you can still do a lot more damage than if you were playing sniper and you're missing all of your shots. But if you are a good sniper, this is the loadout that I would use. The primary should always be the Heatmaker. It does less damage on body shots. That means you're going to be having to hit your headshots. But when you do hit your headshots, if you're running explosive headshots, like you should be as a sniper, you can kill large groups of players just like a demo man with his stickies. And when you kill things or get assists, you build up focus. Now, focus can be activated at any time now. And what focus does, when you scope in, it allows you to keep scoping in. So instead of unscoping after each shot, it'll keep scoping in. which is really good in MvM, because then you can just spam your shots. Well, not spam, but keep shooting your shots very, very quickly, especially if you've increased your reload speed, and you can deliver a lot of high damaging shots if you keep hitting the heads. Secondary, this is the self-aware beauty mark, which is actually just a reskin of the Jurati, but basically the Jurati is the best. It can have the same upgrades as the Mad Milk in the way that it will slow robots down if you throw it at them, but its inherent ability is that it takes mini crits when you throw it on things, and that's good because you can, whereas the Fan of War will take, you know, one giant or one robot you can hit with the Fan of War, the Jurati can splash a lot of things, and if you've got the high recharge rate, it's quite useful. But again, you're going to be focusing on your sniper. And the Bushwhacker, you're not going to get your melee out much, but it is very, very useful if you use it correctly, because you look at the ability of the Bushwhacker, it's crits whenever it would normally mini crit. Now, mini crits are only going to happen if you use your Jurati, for example, or if your soldier is running buff banner. Now, if your soldier uses the buff banner and you run in with your Bushwhacker, if you use it on the tank, you're going to be delivering melee shots of 185. I think it's 185, 195. And if you keep doing that, as long as your soldier is building buff banner and you're using your Bushwhacker, a tank is going to go down quite quickly. If you coordinate it well. So that's the only reason that the Bushwhacker is there. But again, Sniper is a bit of a niche class, and I will be making its own video, just like the Pyro and the Spy, which I'm going to come up to in a second, about ways to play it and why it's very, very good, and why people don't really seem to like it in MvM, but why they should learn to. The final one is the Spy. Like I said, it's a niche class. I'm making its own video to talk about its benefits, but why people shun it. And this is the loadout I would use if I was running Spy. Spy can kind of replace a Scout. Again, I'll make a new video talking about the details about why it can, because it can pick up money and things like that. But the big thing about the Spy is that you can stab things very, very quickly. Let's talk about the weapons. The Latronja is... only reason I've got it here is because of the cloak duration. 40% cloak duration just means that your Dead Ringer, which I'm using down here, will last longer, and that enables you to get further away before you redisguise and come out. When you disguise as a Spy in MvM, robots will stop shooting you. They are pretty dumb, and they won't shoot at you if you are disguised. And if you Dead Ring and redisguise, they're not going to realise it's you. So that's why I'd have longer cloak, just to get out of dangerous situations or to try and pick up money in areas where there's a lot of robots. The default knife is probably the best one, because you don't want to get hit by a pyro or a flare, something like that, and then lose your knife if you're running the Spicicle. And if you upgrade it properly, you upgrade penetration, you upgrade attack speed, you can take down giants extremely quickly with the knife. I've got some videos that will showcase that. Like I said, I'll make a video about the Spy. And the default sapper is all you need. You can sap large groups of robots. The good thing about the Spy is that you can sap things like giant fisting heavies, the steel fist heavies, and they aren't actually giants. So you can sap them, it will totally immobilize them, and you can one-shot them with your knife. Whereas a lot of other classes are going to take a long time to take them down. So that video went on for quite a long time. I didn't realise how long I'll be talking about things, but those are my preferred loadouts in MvM. But like I said, there are lots and lots of different ways of playing MvM, and lots of ways of playing the different classes. So do experiment, but if you're ever worried and you're not sure how to play a specific class, these loadouts are tried and tested and they'll work out for you. And if you upgrade them in the right way, then you'll work really well. But if anyone's got any different loadouts that they want to talk about, post them in the comments. I'll have a read, and I might make some videos in the future about some fun loadouts that you can try in MvM for all of the different classes. But thanks for listening, guys, and as always, let me know what you think.